At 7:28 a.m. in San Diego, I was making coffee in the kitchen when my phone buzzed. The subject line of the email flashed on the screen, "A new beginning." My heart skipped a beat. I set the cup down on the counter, my hand still sticky with milk from Hannah's bottle, my 15-month-old daughter giggling in her high chair, playing with a piece of toast. I opened the email, and what appeared felt like a weight dropping straight into my chest. And a photo. It was Chase, my husband of 7 years, wrapped around a light brown-haired girl who couldn't have been older than 24. They were standing in front of the cabin at Lake Arrowhead. That vacation house was mine, the place where we used to dream of lazy weekends together, plan our future, our family, our quiet life after 40. Below the picture was a cold, concise message. "I've moved in here with Sophie. The house is mine now. The divorce papers are on their way. Don't bother fighting it. The deed's in my name." I sat down, my hands trembling, but not from shock, from fury. A deep, simmering rage. Chase really thought he could just send an email, attach a sappy photo, and unilaterally end everything? Steal the place I paid over $480,000 for with profits from my company? Because he assumed I'd stay quiet and take it like a fool? Hannah let out a giggle, waving her tiny spoon, completely unaware her world had just been turned upside down by a coward's betrayal. I glanced at the wedding photo hanging beside the dining table, us smiling under a white floral arch in caramel. 7 years ago, I thought Chase was someone who would stand by me, no matter what life brought. I placed my fingers on my laptop keyboard, opened a new email, and typed quickly. "Are you sure about that? You might want to double-check the paperwork carefully." I hit send, then blocked his email, his number, everything tied to Chase. I turned back to Hannah and gave her a soft smile. Chase always saw me as the busy mom, bouncing between diapers and packing orders, too soft to protect what I'd built. He forgot one thing. I didn't build $1 million skincare brand with just lipstick and dreams. I had my own attorney, my own accounting system, my own ownership contracts, things Chase never cared enough to understand. I remember the day I signed the contract for that cabin. I wired the funds, I handled the entire transaction. Chase asked to have his name added for tax purposes. I agreed, but not before making my attorney attach a rider securing my sole financial ownership. Right now, there were no tears, no pity, just clear, icy focus. I didn't just need to protect myself. I needed to protect Hannah. She was the only thing that still held real meaning in my life. I lifted Hannah out of her seat and kissed her forehead. I wasn't going to let her grow up in a world where her father disrespected her mother and disregarded the truth. Chase thought I would fall apart. He was wrong. Every word in that email was a one-way ticket to his downfall, legal and very public. Welcome to the first chapter of the nightmare he created for himself. I laid Hannah gently in her crib, tucked the blanket around her, and quietly shut the door. My heart was still pounding. Not from panic, but because my mind was operating at the speed of a war room. Chase thought he could end it all with one email. Unfortunately for him, he picked the wrong woman to cross. I grabbed my phone and called Margot, my personal attorney for the past 3 years. She picked up and said bluntly, "So Chase finally pulled something, didn't he?" I gave a dry laugh. More than a stunt. It's a full-blown scheme, and it's been in the works for a while. I sent her the scanned contract for the lake house, along with the financial appendix Chase once called just a formality. Margot reviewed it for a few minutes and confirmed. The deed might bear his name, but every payment was tracked directly to my business accounts. Every single dollar could be traced. Next, I logged into the security camera system at the lake house, something Chase had no idea existed because I had it installed myself during the last renovation. A chill ran down my spine as I hovered over the footage. I didn't know what I would see, but I knew I had to see it all. I rewound to a clip from about a month ago, right around the weekend Chase said he was going on a company retreat. The screen lit up with him walking into the house, followed by a slim, light brown-haired woman wearing oversized sunglasses and dragging a weekend bag. They were laughing, completely at ease, like they were arriving at their private love nest. She collapsed onto the white sofa I'd personally picked out from a showroom in Santa Monica, while Chase poured 2 glasses of red wine. It looked like a lifestyle ad, except every prop in the frame belonged to me. I froze as she opened the kitchen cabinet, pulled out the porcelain mugs I reserved for anniversaries, and clasped a pearl necklace around her neck. The same necklace I got for my 30th birthday. I knew exactly where it was stored, not at the main house, but tucked away in a drawer at the lake house, along with a few vintage pieces I saved for special occasions. Using the phone ID captured by the camera near the entrance, I searched Sophie Martin on Instagram. Within 60 seconds, I found her public account. The first photo was a mirror selfie taken upstairs. Behind her was the exact painting I'd bought at a local art fair. The caption read, "New beginnings deserve old luxuries." Scrolling down, I saw another image, her in my white silk nightgown, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, holding a wine glass with the caption, "Love tastes better when it's earned. Our place, Lake Life." I clenched my phone, heat rising to my face, but instead of screaming, I opened my cloud storage app, the one I use to archive all invoices, contracts, and personal asset records, the receipt for the necklace, the lake house purchase documents, and, most importantly, an email from Chase dated last August, confirming, "Go ahead and front the cost from your company for now." I moved everything into a separate folder and named it Counter-Strike. Suddenly, a message popped up from Kara, my executive assistant. "Riley, you need to see this." Attached was a TikTok link from the account @SophieGlow. In the video, Sophie was showing off a sapphire engagement ring, my grandmother's ring, which had been locked away in the lake house's safe, never brought back to the city. I had always planned to give it to Hannah on her 18th birthday. Sophie beamed into the camera, kissed Chase's cheek, and said, "Dreams do come true if you're brave enough to claim them." I wasn't angry anymore. I felt disgusted. They thought I'd break down? That I was just some overwhelmed mom, too distracted to notice everything being taken from me? They chose the wrong woman to test. And I was about to show them. No one touches my daughter, my assets, or my name and walks away without paying the price. After closing Sophie's TikTok video, I felt myself stepping into the next phase of battle. No longer emotional, just analytical, cold, sharp, and calculated. I opened my banking app, intending to transfer a small amount to Hannah's savings account, but the screen stopped me cold. Balance, $17.42. I blinked. This account used to hold over $95,000, saved since I was pregnant with Hannah. I'd set up automatic deposits from my income to build her college fund. A joint account Chase and I agreed not to touch unless it was an emergency. I scrolled down. The final transaction was a full withdrawal to an unfamiliar account, made just yesterday, the same day Chase emailed me the divorce papers. Recipient, K Holdings, Cayman Branch. I froze. So it wasn't just Sophie. There was now a trail of offshore transfers. I called Margot immediately. Check this right now. Does Chase have legal authority to withdraw from the joint account for Hannah? Margot was firm. No, not unless both parties agree or he had independent access. You opened that account, right? Yes. He's listed as a secondary signer, but it was never activated. And this qualifies as financial theft. Within 30 minutes, the bank confirmed that the transaction had been authorized using Chase's registered iPad. They also flagged it as suspicious activity and agreed to freeze all operations tied to K Holdings. But that was just the surface. I instructed my company's private accounting team, led by Delaney, to audit every account tied to my personal assets, shares, and digital investment wallets. The results stunned me. Chase had secretly accessed our company's internal system using a temporary VPN installed through a secondary device at home. He had copied tax reports, payroll files, and most recently valuation documents for our intellectual property. What shocked me most was how he did everything just subtle enough to avoid detection, but not smart enough to bypass the multi-layer firewall I'd put in place 2 years ago after an internal audit. Chase thought I was just good at skincare and thank you emails. He had no idea my company's infrastructure was divided into two firewalls, one for standard operations and one strictly for high-level financials, investments, and partner data. Delaney sent me the final breakdown. Besides the $98,000 withdrawn from Hannah's fund, nearly $210,000 was siphoned in smaller amounts from secondary accounts, commissions, investment returns you had earmarked for next year's charity campaigns. All of it was routed to a cluster of IP addresses based in the Cayman Islands. I took screenshots and archived every piece of evidence. Chase didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to walk away, carrying what I had built from nothing. But he forgot one thing. Every login, every keystroke left a trail. And unlike Sophie, I don't live off emotions. I live by data, systems, and the ability to strike back. I called Margot again. We need to initiate emergency asset freeze proceedings for Chase. You have legal grounds, Riley. He violated financial agreements and intentionally misappropriated funds. And there's more. I suspect he's trying to gain root access to my business server. I logged into the mainframe, navigated to the final layer of security, and entered the command. Activate level 5 defense. Unauthorized access triggers, decoy system. I stepped back and exhaled slowly. If Chase tried to breach my company, he'd be entering a maze of fake data designed to log every action in real time while automatically compiling a court-ready complaint after 3 violations. At this point, I wasn't thinking about betrayal. I was thinking about the board. And Chase? He was standing exactly where I needed him, one step ahead of my trap, but one step behind me. When Delaney sent me the final file that afternoon, I thought I was ready for anything. I wasn't. I had still underestimated Chase. The file contained a string of email exchanges between Chase and someone using the address v.davenport@clarionexec.com. I quickly looked it up. Victoria Davenport, Senior VP of Human Resources at Clarion Holdings, the company where Chase had worked for over 9 years. The content made my skin crawl. We confirm that Chase Matthews will be appointed Chief Financial Officer of Clarion Holdings effective August 1st. An asset review is currently underway to ensure no pending legal entanglements could compromise the executive appointment. I pushed my chair back and stood up. The rushed divorce, the asset grabs, the attempt to access my company, those were just pawns in a much bigger game. Chase needed to clean house, consolidate wealth under his name, and eliminate any personal complications that might make the board question his stability. I immediately called Kara, my executive assistant, and asked her to trace Clarion's internal executive timeline. Kara used to work in corporate PR and had sources everywhere. Less than an hour later, she sent me a photo from Clarion's quarterly strategy meeting notes. Chase Matthews, listed as the only internal candidate for CEO, was personally endorsed by the CEO with a clean financial history and stable family background. Stable family background? I glanced toward Hannah's room, where she was quietly stacking building blocks. That was the family he was planning to abandon. For a title and a woman who knew how to keep her mouth shut? Kara followed up with a zip file containing screenshots from Sophie's private Facebook account. She'd used a dummy profile to get accepted. Inside were things I didn't expect. One album was titled Work Hard, Win Harder. The first photo? Sophie standing next to an older man in a gray suit, captioned, Uncle Warren, the man who taught me how to see the long game. I zoomed in on his face. No need to search. Warren Maddox, the current CEO of Clarion Holdings. Sophie wasn't some random affair. She was the CEO's niece. I leaned back in my chair. Chase had planned every step, from the affair to moving into the cabin to draining my accounts, all to ensure that once his appointment was announced, there'd be no wife to split assets with, no legal distractions, no strings attached. I scrolled back through his chats with Sophie. A message from 3 weeks ago popped up. Once I'm officially in, I'll have full control. Let me handle Uncle Warren. What about her? Sophie had asked. Is not a problem. I'll push for custody. Use her work schedule against her. I gripped my phone tighter. He was planning to use the very empire I built to turn the courts against me and take my daughter in the process. Hannah was my entire world, and he saw her as nothing more than a strategic move? No, that wouldn't happen. Right then, a new email from Margot came through. Riley, I just got word. Chase's legal team has filed for temporary custody, claiming an unstable home environment due to your demanding work schedule. They're requesting an emergency hearing to evaluate your parental fitness. I jumped to my feet, chills running through me, not out of fear, but because I realized he'd gone too far. This wasn't about money or pride. This was total war. And me? I was a woman who built a company from nothing, who tracked every cent in every deal. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even the man who once called me wife, lay a hand on my daughter. If Chase had chosen a path with no way back, I'd make sure it led him straight to the edge. I took a deep breath and pulled the office door shut. Kara and Margot were already seated, each with a laptop and stacks of printed documents piled across the table. There was no room left for panic or outrage. This was the phase for precision, strategy, and absolute resolve. What's our first objective? Margot asked bluntly. I didn't hesitate. Get the full evidence of Chase and Warren's collusion to sabotage my company onto Clarion's boardroom table before the CFO appointment becomes official. We have less than 36 hours. Kara opened a preliminary slide deck. I've compiled over 40 emails between Chase and Sophie, as well as 2 internal accounts tied to Warren. The messages refer to monitoring EverTrue's operations, extracting new product data, and this particular line. Once you take control, Uncle Warren will greenlight the market grab plan. Target, 18 months. Michael marked it in red. That's a direct admission of using a C-suite role for personal and family gain, textbook abuse of power and market manipulation. I pulled up logs from EverTrue's internal security system and my skincare company. The access logs showed 3 unauthorized logins from an IP located at the Lake Arrowhead cabin, spaced 10 days apart, each lasting nearly 2 hours. I clicked on the surveillance footage. Every second had been recorded. The screen showed Chase at my desk, working from his personal laptop, cross-referencing documents on his phone while plugging a USB into the side port. Timestamp 11:12 a.m. Saturday, the same day I was in San Diego speaking at a Women in Business Summit. Margot nodded. System breach, data extraction committed at a property registered to the target. That's corporate espionage. Kara switched to a social media tab. This is Sophie live streaming from the cabin that day. You can clearly see Chase reviewing confidential materials, and right behind him is the EverTrue exclusive product roadmap. Her caption? He's reviewing upcoming industry strategies, the kind that'll change the whole game. My skin chilled, not from fear, but from how confidently careless they were. And now, Sophie's own bragging had become irrefutable evidence. Margot moved to the cabin documents. Here's the wire transfer, the sale contract, and the addendum stating Riley Parker Holdings as the funding source. And most importantly, the audio from last April, Chase saying, "Put the house under my name. You're better at finances anyway. But don't worry, it's your place." I nodded. "Store that in the secure vault. We'll drop it at the right moment." Kara moved to the final slide. This is the full file we're presenting to Clarion's board. Evidence of Chase and Warren conspiring to manipulate the organic skincare market. Corporate espionage supported by camera footage and system access logs. Proof that personal assets bought with company funds were intentionally transferred to Chase. The scheme to gain custody of Hannah by fabricating claims about an unstable home. Margot added, I'm drafting a formal request for an emergency board meeting at Clarion and copying the Federal Trade Commission. Charges of anti-competitive collusion and abuse of corporate position could trigger a full investigation of both the current CEO and their CFO nominee. I hit send on the first batch of evidence to our legal partners and opened my backup drive. Inside was a file labeled failsafe, chase_maddox_access log. I'd never thought I'd need it. A full export of Chase's financial activities over the past 18 months, including suspicious investments in a company called Blake and Harlow Ventures, a direct competitor of mine. Attached, a screenshot of their advisory board, and there she was. Sophie, listed as a minority stakeholder. They're building a backdoor to dominate the natural product market, I whispered, and they think I wouldn't find it. Margot closed her laptop. Then it's time to flip the board. And Riley, you hold every single piece. I stood up and checked the clock. 26 hours left, just enough to turn a nomination into a public collapse. That evening, at exactly 7:46 p.m., the security system sent a notification. Movement detected at the lake cabin. I opened the remote monitoring app instantly. The screen lit up, Chase walked in through the front door, followed by Sophie and Warren Maddox, CEO of Clarion. I sat upright. Kara and Margot had just returned from the law office, still in their coats. I pointed at the screen. They're here, all three of them. Chase placed a bottle of champagne on the dining table and popped it open. Sophie laughed, raising her glass. Warren dropped into a chair, loosened his tie. Every word came through crystal clear. The cabin was wired with high-grade audio mics Chase had no clue I'd installed during the last renovation. Warren raised his glass. To the future CFO. Tomorrow is yours. Chase grinned. And hers too. Your niece helped make the transition flawless. Sophie smirked. As for Julia, sorry, Riley, she's probably still busy playing the independent CEO role. I turned to Margot. That's enough. Send it. Margot hit send on the email we had drafted that morning. Subject: urgent. Serious ethical and legal violations involving Clarion Holdings CFO candidate and current C. Attachments: full chain of emails, photos, security footage, wire transfers, and documents proving market manipulation. Kara sent copies to the SEC and the DOJ. I submitted an anonymous tip to 3 of the biggest financial media outlets: Forbes, Bloomberg, and Wall Street Insider. Just then, I received another system alert. Unauthorized access detected, Lake Arrowhead cabin. He's trying to breach your company, Kara said. Let him think it's working. I pulled up the camera feed. Chase was seated at my desk in the cabin, plugging a USB into his laptop. What he didn't know was that the system had redirected him to a decoy environment, populated with simulated data, designed to bait and record every keystroke. Start recording the session, I said. Back it up for court. And then, as if orchestrated by fate, at 8:19 p.m., blue lights flashed across the cabin windows. A tactical unit moved in, weapons drawn. The cabin fell into dead silence. Police, everyone stay where you are. Hands off the devices. Chase froze. The USB slipped from his hand. Sophie broke into sobs. Warren jumped up, shouting, "What is this? I'm the CEO. This is a massive mistake." An officer stepped forward and read the warrant aloud. Charges included conspiracy to commit financial fraud, unlawful access to corporate systems, and abuse of executive authority for personal gain. Chase looked around, panicked. This can't be happening. Who did this? I glanced at the monitor, picked up my phone, and sent one last message to his inbox. Not every mother is too busy to notice what you're pulling. The officers handcuffed all 3 and escorted them out. Warren kept yelling that he'd call legal, while Sophie stared at the ground, mascara smeared down her face. I shut off the screen. Margot gently squeezed my shoulder. It's all in motion now, we just have to wait. But I wasn't waiting, I was preparing for the next move. This power game wasn't over. But round 1? I had just placed the final piece on the board, and Chase, The man who thought he was controlling everything was now left with nothing but cuffed wrists and a dazed stare at the cabin he once thought was his victory. 2 weeks after the police stormed the cabin, I received an email from Clarion Holdings' legal department. Warren Maddox and Chase Matthews had been immediately suspended. That same day, Clarion's homepage announced that the board of directors had launched an internal ethics investigation and was fully cooperating with the SEC and DOJ on pending criminal charges. Soon after, the media erupted. Forbes ran the headline, Clarion's CFO candidate and CEO tied to corporate espionage scandal. Bloomberg didn't hold back either. Mistress, Lake House, and the plot to destroy a woman led startup. Warren resigned 3 days later. Chase was fired for failing to meet the ethical standards required of executive leadership. His retirement package was frozen, and all stock-based bonuses were revoked on the spot. Sophie, on the other hand, vanished from social media. According to Kara, through a mutual contact from law school, she had been rejected by 4 major firms. Her resume flagged in HR systems due to involvement in corporate sabotage. Eventually, she moved back in with her parents in Akron, Ohio. The TikToks of diamond rings, wine nights, and luxury shots at the cabin? Deleted. But the internet doesn't forget. And neither do I. As for the lake house, the center of their betrayal, after appraisal and review, the court ruled it was legally mine, citing detailed financial records and the original purchase agreement. The $310,000 Chase had illegally transferred offshore? Almost entirely recovered thanks to the bank's quick action and SEC assistance. All legal fees paid by him in full. I never had to file a lawsuit. Truth and Law handled the rest. As for my company, Evertrue, what looked like a scandal became the catalyst of our biggest growth spurt. In the next quarter, revenue rose by 39%, and new customer numbers tripled in just 60 days. The press started calling Evertrue the ethical business model beauty brands should follow. I was invited to speak at the Women in Business Summit in Chicago and received outreach from 3 sustainable investment funds. Instead of scaling aggressively, I chose to reinvest in people and purpose. I raised salaries across the board and launched the Evertrue Scholarship Fund, dedicated to single mothers starting their own clean beauty ventures. Hannah still sleeps in the same bed I used during college inside our little house in North Park. I never moved. I wanted her to grow up knowing that her mother stood tall in the very place she was once torn down. Every weekend, I take Hannah to the lake house. We plant lavender along the porch, pack old keepsakes into memory boxes, replace all the bedding, and toss every wine glass, porcelain cup, and tablecloth that held echoes of a past we no longer live in. One October afternoon, I rocked slowly on the porch swing, watching Hannah play near the water, golden sunlight catching the soft curls in her hair. She turned back and held out a tiny, wild daisy. "Mommy, will you keep this flower?" I nodded and smiled. "I'll press it into my journal. One day, you'll see, the first flower you ever picked grew right here, where Mommy took back everything." Maybe Chase thought that morning email was his declaration of victory. But in truth, it was only the beginning of his downfall. And the final chapter, that belongs to me, a mother, a founder, a woman who refuses to let anyone else define her worth. Riley's story reminds us that betrayal isn't always about walking away. Sometimes it's about trying to take everything we've built with our whole heart. But in those moments, resilience and clarity become the strongest weapons. Riley didn't just protect her daughter and her company. She flipped the entire game with courage and strategy. In real life, if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or stripped of opportunity, remember, you don't need revenge fueled by anger. Just rise, succeed, and claim the peace you choose for yourself. What do you think about Riley's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about life and family.